Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Inside Scoop. And today I'm so excited to talk to Chief Strockis about what's happening in Oakbrook, Illinois. First of all, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
It's Strokas, actually.
Strockis. Okay, great. So
No, common mistake. No problem.
no worries. So I got that corrected. That's good to know. So before we kind of jump into things, I wanted to say, so the reason this all came about is I was at the CC Rock conference and happened to be talking to some different police officers and someone from your organization and also some other folks that are on the solution provider side. And there's a lot of interesting things happening in Oakbrook. And for those people that don't know, Oakbrook, Illinois, it's due west of Chicago. And Chief, about how many minutes or how many miles do you think it is from Chicago?
We're about 13 miles straight
13
west
miles.
of Chicago.
Yeah. So, that was my stomping grounds. That's where I kind of cut my teeth in LP back in the day. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but I was an LP manager at Oakbrook Mall. And Oakbrook, it's an affluent area. And the population's I think it's between 8 and 9,000. But there's a lot of corporate headquarters there. And it's a nice community for people who want to commute around Chicago to jobs. So with all that said, Oakbrook has always kind of battled ORC groups and some different things, within retail crime. And I felt like it was really important to talk to the chief today because it's a great example of what's happening across the country. And what's happening differently in Oakbrook is that they have some new tools that they're using. So with all of that said, Chief, if you would like to kind of just introduce yourself and talk about your background a little bit and help our audience get to know you.
Sure. Again, my name is Brian Strockis. I've been with the department since 2000, so I'm in my 24th year. I've wore a lot of different roles within this organization, from patrolman, obviously, to sergeant, detective sergeant. I was assistant commander with the Major Crimes Unit and Public Integrity Team for the county. And then I've been chief since June of 2022. So just over 2 years. And like you said, we're the easternmost DuPage County jurisdiction. So we're right on the edge of DuPage and Cook County. 294 is right on our eastern edge there, and we kind of look at that as the line in the sand. There's a much different prosecution out here in DuPage County, which we're fortunate to have.
Mhm.
And I think the Oakbrook Center is a pretty busy place, pretty vibrant shopping area, and it's because of our geographic location. We're so close to Chicago, I-88, 294, major thoroughfares like 22nd Street, Route 83, Roosevelt Road, Ogden Avenue, all run right through town. So it makes it very accessible, which makes it a shopping destination, but also, it does attract a certain level of retail theft and burglary for sure in that area.
The mall, it's a beautiful mall. It's an outdoor mall, and it has a lot of upscale stores, and there are a lot of, really highly desirable goods, in addition to this really convenient shopping area. So I think it's always been a magnet since it opened, for the good folks who want to come in and shop, but also for some of those unsavory characters, like we mentioned. Um, so talk a little bit about what led up to some recent changes with some grant money that you guys received. I know, what was it last year? Kwame Raoul, who's the Attorney General, I think there was a grant that was like $5 million. You guys didn't get all of that, but
Yeah, so the first year actually was in 2022, and really there was not a lot of municipalities that knew about that funding opportunity. And I was really able to, it was right when I started in this new role, and I was really able to capitalize on a very large portion. I think it was about $780,000 that first year.
Mhm.
We were able to incorporate a bunch of tools, put license plate readers at every entrance and every exit to the Oakbrook Shopping Center, which has been huge for us. In subsequent years, our funding, we just got the award this year. It's like 142,000. So obviously that number has gone down a lot, but also a lot of other jurisdictions are taking advantage of that great opportunity for funding to combat organized retail crime.
All right. What's the criteria to win that grant? Do you have to meet certain thresholds for crime statistics? Like, how do they choose?
It's To be honest, it's a fairly simple grant application that you have to fill out. You have to obviously justify your involvement in addressing retail crimes, which it's very easy for us to do. I feel like we're an agency that's dealing with organized retail crime on a daily basis, and we're definitely making a lot of arrests. We've partnered with the AG's office to do mall blitzes several times throughout the year. Those have been a success. You basically have to dictate what your goals are as a law enforcement agency, and what you're doing to kind of curb retail crime, and how that crime could tie into other crimes, and how that's related, and how your agency goes about taking that as a priority. So some of the questions are very geared towards the makeup of your community and how many retailers you have, and others are really from a philosophical standpoint of how you feel retail crimes impact your community in many different ways. So
Mm.
you just need to explain that throughout the grant process.
And so I have to know, how did you guys get the jump on it that first year? Did you have an inside track somehow?
Um, yeah, so we like I said, for years we've been partnering with the AG's office and doing these mall blitzes. I was fortunate to meet our Attorney General Kwame Raoul on several occasions. I had heard that this funding was coming available. I think when it originally got allocated, there's a very tight turnaround to submit your requests, and I think a lot of agencies were not able to meet that timeline. And like I said, I was eager to initiate some new programs here with the police department being in my new role, and I really jumped all over it, and was able to get a lot of funding that first year, which helped us in overtime in some of our efforts that we're doing to really kind of flood those areas, but also helped in equipment. And even that first year, we were able to get some undercover vehicles, which everybody knows what your typical undercover vehicle looks like, even if it's completely unmarked. And the direction we were going to, especially with the new TAC unit that was really tasked with addressing some of these retail crimes, it was important for us to get some cars that don't look like the police or smell like the police. And we've been very successful with utilizing that equipment.
Yeah, so Mini Coopers and Hyundais.
Yeah, minivans and soccer mom vans. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
totally.
non-discreet look. That's what we were going for.
Perfect. So you mentioned LPR. I know that a lot of retailers are looking into that right now as well. So is it just at around Oakbrook Mall, or are you deploying at other areas in the community, or?
Yeah, so I've said this before. Oakbrook is about 8 square miles, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a higher density of LPRs within 8 square miles anywhere in the country.
Wow.
Right now, we're at about 85 LPRs throughout our community. Surrounding areas like Elmhurst and Hinsdale and Lombard, Villa Park all have LPRs, and they're all tied into our network. But our LPR program kind of started with our homeowners, and what we did was enter into a cost sharing measure with our homeowner association groups, to where the village would pay 50% and the homeowners association would pay 50% to cover their entrances and exits. And that's been very beneficial for us here in Oakbrook, because we have a lot of subdivisions where there's one way in and one way out, or two ways in and two ways out, in a lot of instances three or four, but not a lot of different entrances and exits. So for us to be able to get those covered for stolen vehicles or hot listed vehicles coming into those areas, it's been very beneficial. And then what we did was, with the grant funding, Brookfield Properties, that's who owns Oakbrook Center. I know for a long time they were interested in installing license plate readers, but I think with any large business, and I think the bigger the corporation, the more lawyers get involved. And I think that without that funding, we'd still be talking about putting them up. But it really gave me the opportunity to say, hey, I could fund this for you, and fund several years of recurring costs, with the understanding that once that's done, you have to maintain the equipment and maintain the subscriptions. And Brookfield Properties was 100% on board with that. It took us some time to work through the MOU, but happy to say we're up and running, and it's been a game changer for us.
When you say MLU, what does that mean?
Memorandum of understanding between the government entity and any private entity, as to what we're be using the information for, how we would use it. A lot of legal jargon, a lot of which I don't understand, but that's what the lawyers are for, to work through all of that. But we have that up in place, and we're excited now for kind of the next phase of camera integration. We've been talking about for a long time getting access to the Brookfield property cameras, not the individual stores, but all of their cameras that they have throughout their property, which they have a very good camera system. We're very close to getting that agreement signed between the two parties to have access to those cameras when there's a 911 call initiated or any police call for service in the area, to where officers could actually view those cameras in real time on their mobile data terminals and see what they're getting into, or possibly try and identify suspects or locations of where they may be heading.
So let's talk about that workflow for a second. I'm always, logistically, how do things work, right? I like to break it down. So if Brookfield, let's say that they get on board with this and everything is great with their internal cameras. Let's say they've got, is it something like you're tracking groups through the interior of the mall? Again, it's an outdoor mall, so it's them walking, and so you're tracking them and their movements, or how's this working?
So we have a system called Fuses, which is powered by Axon. Axon's one of the largest the largest provider of body cameras and in-car cameras in the country for police cameras. Our Fuses platform is basically a real-time crime center software. And so any disparate camera system can be tied into our platform, whether you have Verkada cameras or Milestone cameras or a camera system off the shelf at Costco. We're able to take that camera feed and tie it into our platform. So when an officer is responding to any location, automatically the 5 closest camera locations will populate in real time on their screen. Another amazing feature for that, like you mentioned, tracking suspects or organized retail groups, is there's AI functionality built into that software. So you could take a dumb camera, if you will, and a non-AI camera, and turn it into a smart camera by ingesting that into our platform. And so officers could say, if they're looking for the male white suspect in a red shirt that ran from Macy's in a certain direction, rather than going through and looking through individual feeds, which could be extremely time consuming, they can enter that AI functionality into the system, and all the cameras that are on the platform will try and pick up that suspect. They can then screenshot that, blast it out to other officers in the area. And so what that will do for us, and we have that up and live in other locations and very soon with Brookfield Properties. But what that will ultimately do for us is not only help us solve cases, but also prevent any stops of individuals that we shouldn't be stopping.
Right.
We're nothing in police work. Very rare is there an actual in progress call. By the time someone calls 911, it goes to the dispatch center, the information's relayed, that gets out to the officers in the field. It's very watered down. And so a description that you might have doesn't necessarily match the suspect or the vehicle that you're looking for, but having the information at your fingertips as the officer responding, or operators working in a real-time crime center and relaying certain information to the officers responding to that location, make it much more efficient and accurate to be making stops on the suspects that are actually involved in any sort of crime.
So would the next logical step, I mean, I'm kind of asking you a leading question here, but would it be to have access to the retailer's cameras? I mean, to me, then you're actually seeing the crime, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I'm hopeful that we'll get there. We do have retailers throughout the community, like your local our local liquor store, for example, Safeway Liquors. I believe they only have 2 locations in the state. But when we first went on this platform, they had a burglary at their location. We said, hey, we have this technology where we could be live on your system. So when officers are responding to a burglar alarm, they could see it's an actual bona fide burglary and step up the response. They were one of the first retailers to get on board. And so now in real time, I could pull up their cameras, see what's going on in the store. I understand that a lot of retailers, especially these big box stores, are not comfortable with giving the police full access to their camera systems. But the way we work around that is something called CAD conditional ability. And so basically CAD is computer aided dispatch. We could set up parameters to where an officer cannot pull up that camera system unless there's a bona fide 911 call at that location. And when the 911 call is up and live in the CAD system, the access to the camera system would be live. And then when that call is done and over with, it would be shut down.
Mhm.
And the CJIS compliant vault and tracking to see who's in what camera for whatever amount of time. So I think it's just education and getting in front of people and explaining that it's not Big Brother watching. We certainly don't have time to watch our own 80 license plate readers that are all throughout the village. But the more cameras that we're able to get on the platform, the higher likelihood it will be that we'll have a actual suspect photo or a vehicle image, and our detectives aren't bogged down or tied down as they were in years past, following up on cases that have no leads. We could actually spend our time and resources dedicated to those cases that there's actually something to follow up on.
Yeah, I think as a retailer, I can imagine they'd be a little reluctant to, pick up the phone and call 911 on every time that they have a shoplifter, right? I think that there's a fear of wasting your time, first of all, or maybe the case is not as clear cut, so there's a little reluctance maybe. Uh, would you see this as used in a situation where, for instance, it's like a big grab and run, like if they have a flash robbery type situation? Would that be a good use case for this?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like the example I gave with that liquor store is, unfortunately, when something like that happens, is kind of the time for us to say, see, this is why we need the system to be in place. Recently there was an attempted overnight break-in at a large jewelry store in our jurisdiction, and we were able to approach the owner and management team after the fact and say, this is, was our response without having camera integration. This would be the possible response moving forward.
Mhm.
It's something that also gives retailers and the people that work in those stores a sense of security, just like it does to our teachers and staff at our school district. We're tied into those camera systems, and they don't view it as Big Brother watching because we're not watching. But God forbid if a critical incident occurred there, or if we needed to be in that system to give us a more accurate response, I think everyone would agree that that's a good thing when used properly.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. Besides the LPR, what other types of tools did you get with this grant money?
Yeah. So the biggest thing was that Fusus real-time crime center software. What we're able to do is actually build out an actual real-time crime center, which is actually right next door to my office. And now we're creatively staffing that. That the reality is in law enforcement now, most dispatch centers are consolidated, right? So our dispatch center, DUCOM, dispatches from many other jurisdictions. There's call takers and dispatchers that are tasked with doing many different things that they're restricted to the information that they can give out on any particular call. And now all this technology feeding into one place. I think real-time crime centers are the future of policing. And, we mentioned Slack channels. That's been a huge thing that we're on board with, where there's real-time information getting passed from jurisdiction to jurisdiction rather than waiting for a bulletin to come out days later that shows, hey, this person just hit this retailer, and then a detective somewhere along the line matches that up with a different case that they have. Now that information is actually getting passed on in real time, and it's really amazing to see how that's evolving and translating into real arrest. Our jurisdiction in Oakbrook is by no means the biggest agency in DuPage County, nor the biggest population or geographical area. But since the Pretrial Fairness Act was enacted in September 18th of 2023 until today, or yesterday, actually, the statistic, Oakbrook has the third most arrests in the county, behind only Naperville and DuPage County, which are huge in geographical area and much larger police departments. But I think the technology and the motivation by the officers, and also the last piece too, the relationships that our guys are building with the loss prevention community here in town. I think it's a trust thing. I think our loss prevention agents and our undercover guys and our detectives and even our patrol guys are making these contacts with loss prevention agents, and they're trusting them that they're going to give them good information and that the officers aren't going to act on it without probable cause or reasonable suspicion to make these stops and make these arrests and uncover a lot of stolen merchandise. So we've been incredibly successful. I mean, those numbers are a huge jump for us, and it really is a result of proactive policing. I mean, that real-time crime center software that I mentioned, we have technology called Star Chase, to where we have handheld devices and actually devices that shoot out of the front of a squad car. Like who knew 20 years ago, 24 years ago when I started, that we'd be shooting GPS devices out of at the push of a button? But we're doing that all the time.
Yeah.
And the reality is, everybody's running from the police or fighting with the police nowadays. And I think in too many other jurisdictions, the protocol is to turn the lights off and go in the other direction. And we're just not doing that here in Oakbrook. We are being methodical and as safe as we can and incorporating these tools into a lot of vehicle pursuits that we're getting into. But we are getting into a lot of pursuits, and we're trying to mitigate that with stop sticks and automatic stop sticks and Star Chase and real-time information. But in order to be successful and to keep a shopping center like Brookfield Properties 100% occupied by retailers, I think that you have to have a proactive stance, and that you have to make a statement and make it known that it's a priority in policing in your community.
Yeah, I know that there's this nationwide, just sort of bemoaning of the downfall of malls, right? Malls are just becoming ghost towns. And I think it's because what you just mentioned is part of it, right? There's this rampant crime that was just let go. Oakbrook has taken the opposite tactic. You guys aren't putting up with it. And I have to say, since I, engaged with Oakbrook PD way back in the day, always very professional, always went out of their way to come in and meet the LP teams and, really develop that relationship. And that's what it takes. We can talk about Starlink and all these other technologies, but if you're not out putting FaceTime in and meeting people and building that rapport and that relationship, you're not going to get anywhere. But I do have to ask you, you guys are putting up some great numbers. Is there a little bit of competitive nature there in your department? You guys a little,
Yes. So I think a little healthy competition is a good
Yeah.
thing. But I think that's also the result of creating opportunities for guys. I've been with this department for 24 years, and for much of my career, it was like you were either a patrolman or you're a detective, and you can kind of aspire to rise through the ranks. But I think without creating specialty assignments or something for guys to work towards, there's not much motivation to go out there and be proactive. But now, we have a 4-man TAC team that's expanding to a 5-man team. We have a canine. We have an officer assigned to the DEA task force. We have detectives assigned, deputized Secret Service agents, and we're allowing our officers to work these saturation missions outside of our jurisdiction in collaboration with our partner agencies, and do some things where they're actually feeling like they're making a difference, and they are making a difference. And I think that having that high morale and having relationships with loss prevention agents that also want to be proactive, but are sometimes kind of handcuffed by internal policies. But when we're able to bridge that gap, and maybe if certain checkpoints aren't made, or all of the dots aren't there to make a stop in the loss prevention world, we can certainly make a consensual stop or a traffic stop and see where it involves in the police world. And I think when that trust is there between loss prevention and the police, then that's when you can be really successful. And it's the statistics speak for themselves. I mean, we're recovering a ton of stolen merchandise, not just from our community, because as you well know, these booster crews don't just hit a specific place. They'll hit 5 or 6 different jurisdictions in a given day, wherever they can be successful. And we're just trying to let them know that there's much harder places, much easier places to commit those crimes than here in Oakbrook.
So does the support of your state's attorney figure in here? Is his name Bob Berlin? Is he pretty supportive of what you guys are trying to do?
Hugely supportive. So you'll see in a lot of our headlines that Bob Berlin's office charges a lot of these organized retail offenders with burglary. not just retail theft. And I think that, burglary is a forcible felony. And I think that just shows how seriously he takes these crimes. And, that we need to prosecute any crime to its fullest extent and really send a message. And I think that Bob Berlin and his team do that consistently. And I think that, people are taking notice that it's easier to commit these crimes in other counties and other jurisdictions. But yes, our partnership with his office has been second to none. And even the collaboration between his office and the Attorney General's office, and getting this grant funding in the right hands and using it properly, I think that partnership has been great.
Yeah, it all has to fire in all cylinders, right, for it to work. And I think
Yeah.
you guys are a great example of that. So you told me before that I could ask you about anything. So I'm going to take this into a little bit more of a sensitive area. So I had seen a couple of interviews with you regarding some of the immigrants that are being, I don't know how they're getting out there, if they're being bused, if they're taking rental cars or what they're doing, but there's folks who are Venezuelan refugees who are coming out and they're engaging in it's RORC activity. Are you guys working on, or are you collaborating with any other departments to try and find out, who is recruiting these folks? Like there has to be sort of the head of this RORC group. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have seen a huge spike in migrant arrests. It seems to have tailed off a little bit here recently, but I think those numbers right at the same time when the Pretrial Fairness Act went into full effect, that's when our arrest numbers spiked through the roof. And the thing is that not many of those arrestees talk to the police very much, and I think a lot of them were under the impression, sometimes rightfully so, that they're not going to be held after arrest, and we saw many times the same offenders getting locked up here in Oakbrook, and they were arrested in Chicago last week, and they were arrested in a different jurisdiction a couple weeks before. And I think that that act and whatever these people are being told relative to committing these crimes has really been sort of detrimental and tough on police agencies to keep up with.
Right.
The amount of arrests to book someone, the officers down on the street, has jumped significantly because we're dealing with migrant crimes, just like so many other communities are as well.
Are we still dealing with overcrowding in jails? Is that still an issue, or
Uh, not really, because now pretty much everyone is. Not everyone. There are the state attorney's office often files motions to detain, and sometimes those are granted. But I think that the jails are not facing an overcrowded issue anymore, and much of that probably has to do with the Pretrial Fairness Act.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a sad situation. I'm glad to hear that it's trending down a little bit for you guys, and I'm hoping that it's not just being pushed to another jurisdiction. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can get a handle on that. So, what else about Oakbrook? What else can you tell us about Oakbrook or your department, or any tips that you have for working with your department for retailers?
Yeah, we attend mall meetings pretty often. We have a really good relationship with mall management. They do have a very good security team. One of the things that I think is kind of unique for us is we've actually given the security office one of our radios. So thankfully, we haven't used it in a while. But if an emergency justifies a civilian, a security officer, getting on the air and saying, "Hey, this crew is just pulled up in this area of the mall, and they just committed a large scale grab and run," we're able to respond quickly to that location, because again, we're not waiting for that 911 call to go to dispatch and for it to be dispatched. So I think that's a good safety net that we have in place there. And yeah, like I said, we really take retail crime seriously here, and I think that it shows that if you look at Michigan Avenue, for example, and kind of how that looks now, compared to no vacancy for retailers in the Oakbrook Center Mall, and people wanting to invest out here, and people feeling safe to come into this community and shop, dine, and play, because the police are taking a proactive stance. I think that is is what people want in general. You don't want to feel like going to the mall is dangerous. You want to come out here and spend your money and feel safe. And I think with all this technology and our proactive philosophy, we're able to provide that.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to talk with you again, maybe in a few months if you have some more developments with, all this technology, maybe come out and look at your real-time crime center. That would be fun, right?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. We're actually just now. It's been operational for a while on a limited basis, but we're finding ways to creatively staff that. That's the difficult part is
Right.
having the individuals with that skill set that are able to staff that. But what we're doing is working with some of the agencies that we work with regularly on these saturation missions, and they're providing staffing. We're having some of our part timers provide staffing. Maybe a light duty officer is in there, and so we're seeing that staff more. So I'd love to have you come out and take a
Right.
look and see what that really is doing for us.
Hey, I'm right down the road. I would love to. Well, it was
Yeah,
awesome talking with you. And again, I would love to talk with you again sometime. I want to encourage anybody who's listening to this to go visit Oakbrook Mall. It's absolutely beautiful. Oakbrook is a beautiful community itself. But thank you so much, Chief. And everyone have a great day. Thanks.
thank you so much for having me.